Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we talk to new, emerging and experienced artists from around New Zealand about their creative journey, art practice and process. I'm Mandy Yarkich. This week I'm speaking with veteran New Zealand sculptor Jim Wheeler. Jim lives in Auckland and is an artist predominantly concerned with nature.
When I see an interesting plant, I want it to be a native because it's just appropriate. That's what I want to know. It's what I want to portray. So all the works in the artist gallery are native trees, generally leaves or trunks, and the way they behave.
Jim usually works in cast metals such as bronze, aluminium and iron, but he also uses concrete, ceramics, plastics, wood, stone and fabric, whatever is appropriate to express his ideas. His current work is a blend of botany, biology and beauty. His interest in plants and how plant communities evolve informs his sculptural practice. Jim has been exhibiting sculpture and drawing since 1979, with 8 solo exhibitions and many group shows here and overseas. His latest exhibition, Following Nature, is showing at Artists Gallery from the 2nd of August through to the 22nd of August. I loved meeting Jim and his lovely wife Bunny today and welcoming them back to Muriwai, the beach that Jim came to on his very first day in New Zealand 41 years ago. Jim speaks passionately about his 43-year career as a sculptor, the incredibly involved process of bronze sculpture, and his fascination for the mange fern, the Puriri leaf, and the Tanekaha, and how the New Zealand forests and all that lies within inspires so much of his work. Hello, Jim. Welcome to Muriwai.
Hello, Mandy.
So good to see you. And I heard that you came 41 years ago to New Zealand from the USA. And on the first day that you were in New Zealand, you came to Muriwai Beach.
I came here cross country when it was little 2-lane roads, and probably growing up in the east coast of the USA where it was virtually forest forever because the agriculture had been stopped 100 years ago at that point. And I was a little bit sad that, in my view, New Zealand looked like a golf course because all the forest, which is my interest in life, were gone. But when I came here, I descended into the bush and it was wonderful. And I had a conversation, and on that first day, I looked at the trees and I said, this is ancient forest. It looks like dinosaur era trees. And it was true.
Yeah.
I had this amazing insight straight away. So that got me hooked. And after 20 years, I decided I'd been here long enough to begin to use the native bush in my sculpture.
Yeah, and you've done that so beautifully. I mean, you've really captured it. Well, first of all, welcome to Creative Matters.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, it's a real honour to meet you. And, you know, you've had such an incredible career in sculpture over 40 years.
Yeah, I was born in a little town in North Carolina, which is a state on the east coast of the USA. It's one of the first colonies, English colonies. And it's about the size of Matamata or Kaitaia. It was just a little town, but it's quite old. It was there right at the beginning. And 2 major crossroad at the time, 18th century roads, crossed north and south, east and west, but it never developed. When I was growing up, it was the county seat, the biggest town in the whole county, but it was still only 4,000 people. And it was a lot like a New Zealand place. So when I came here, it didn't feel strange.
Yeah.
Mostly farming, little furniture making industries. Tobacco and cotton were big, and tobacco was probably, the biggest industry. So it felt just like a New Zealand town. If you went there, you'd feel right at home.
Yeah.
If you live in rural New Zealand, it was like that.
Right. And your father was a professional forester.
Yes, he worked for a power company, and as all power companies do, they buy a lot of land, and his job was to supervise the planting of trees, just like in Central North Island here, vast stands of pine trees and all the harvesting and everything they use trees for. He was in charge of setting it up. So from the very beginning of planting all the way through their life, and then cutting them in the end. And unfortunately, there was a terrible ice storm right at the peak of the harvesting after years and years, decades and decades, that snapped all these pine trees just like toothpicks. So that was a bad event.
Yeah.
But he studied forestry and backed out of being a PhD type forester to go into the actual out in the bush in the woods. So I grew up going out in the woods and looking and listening to him and asking, as everyone does, Daddy, are there rattlesnakes? And
yeah,
say,
all those crazy things.
He'd say, if you look for them, you'll see them.
So having a father who was, a forester, that I guess was your sort of introduction to botany and plants.
In a way, like all children, they sort of look at what their parents do and take it for granted. My father and parents really were interested in making sure we were educated, so I was able to go to university, virtually saved from the moment I was born, so I could go to university, of course. But when I was at university, I had those two things, biology and art. So I made sure I had one course every term in each. And then in America, you have to study a little bit of everything for undergraduate. So it really started, my interest in botany started when I was at university. I had these amazing teachers, and this one in particular took you out into the woods and would ask you these questions that were dumbfounding at the beginning. But what he was getting you to do was observe the forest and look back in decades and see why it looks like it does now. So that was so intriguing that changed the whole way I perceived walking through the forest, looking down at the tiniest things and looking up at the biggest things, and also looking at as a community and how it all lives and works together. That began when I was at university.
And you still have that, that you can see that through your work and the way you live your life, I guess.
Well, that's really what I do now. And it's taken decades finding your way through what to do and how to do it to get to this point. So, yeah, it was kind of like a formula that you have to grow into to recognize its significance in the center point of your life could be wrapped around it. In fact, you could say the old phrase, you don't see the forest for the trees for me, because I was a sculptor, but I made abstract art. Like everyone else in the late 70s and early 80s. That's what everyone did. But coming here, I was completely struck, as I said before, by this ancient forest. And I never stopped being interested. So I was constantly putting little bits together, every day, 2 cents worth or whatever. And eventually I said, I can do it. And using art and using plants and in my art was a big step. And that started probably 20 years ago at least, if not 30. Yeah, so
that's
it took
amazing.
a long time.
Yeah, so you've had a long journey all around plants. So if we just go back to the beginning after university, how did you actually become a sculptor?
Well, like all arts graduates, there's nothing for you out there. So odd jobs, waiting tables, that sort of stuff. And eventually I heard that one of my professors I went to 2 universities, was living fairly nearby where I was at the time. And I went to visit him, and he took me on as sort of an assistant for a short time. And while I was there, we were visited by a mutual friend that I'd met her once, and he'd met it longer. And she was a sculptor, sort of, and she told us about this apprenticeship program in New Jersey. There was a rich man that hired people to do his work for him, and his name was Seward Johnson. So he was the heir to the Johnson & Johnson fortune, and he had an oceanographic institute as well as an art institute, the Seward Johnson atelier of sculpture. So he was proving to his father, if you want to be cynical, that he was a worthy person to receive the fortune.
Interesting.
So we had this huge factory, basically, of 40 artists living and working together. So it was a little bit tense occasionally. And the job there was to take an idea from Johnson, and he was a figurative sculptor, but he was more like very, very Norman Rockwell-y, or, very not sophisticated. He would get a person, he had a modeling department. They make a little 300 millimeter model, and he would come in and bend one of the feet or something, say, okay. And then he would come back when there was a 2-meter version or whatever, life-size figure, and he would push the nose sideways or something and walk out. And then he would be there to cut the ribbon when the bronzes were installed.
Oh, wow.
He had his own company that was placing his art. So, and in between all that, he had all these apprentices and masters. We worked under master craftsmen, and we moved around from stage to stage and learned everything from the ground up. And this was exactly what all artists or sculptors did from time immemorial. Centuries or thousands of years, artists worked under masters and learned everything just by doing it. Basically, you were slaves. My joke was, learn how to do it as an apprentice. That way you can make all the mistakes on someone else's work.
Yeah, true.
So I was able to go through all that 2 years, and it was set up like a school. I had certificates and all that stuff, just like a curriculum. And for the degree, it was all in black and white, which I actually presented to the New Zealand government. I came down here for a job. I met a Kiwi at this giant sculpture school and asked him for a job. I was young enough and foolish enough to jump off cliffs. And I came down here, and after 6 months, I decided I wanted to stay. So I had all these, I wrote back and got all the academic certificates, just like degrees, and presented them as part of my bid to stay. And you could get, this was 1981 or 2, and it was very easy to get permanent residence. And Muldoon was his think big period, get skilled labor from overseas to build all these giant projects. So it was a little bit of a joke between me and the bureaucrat. We both smiled secretly at each other that I was qualified under that scheme.
Brilliant. I mean, that must have been an incredible way to start your art career or your art practice.
It was just an amazing, I can't believe how lucky I was to stumble on it, really. It was through knowing just people and friendships.
Yeah. And what made you decide to go that way after studying biology?
Well, I never gave up on biology, as the story will tell. As an artist, you have to be open to everything. You have to fall back on this and that and the other as things change in your situation, as well as the economy or whatever. So it was a great opportunity, and I worked very hard, and I made sure that I learned everything as well as I could. And when this opportunity came up, I asked a Kiwi. He came in and asked him for a job and helped set up bronze casting. here in Auckland Artworks Studio, and that re-established bronze casting for sculpture in New Zealand beginning in 1981. It had fallen into hands of a few sculptors that made their own work. There was a commercial one-man foundry that made all the monuments around town, but he died. So everything would come to a halt.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Just in the 80s.
Yeah, this man, David Reed, who was an inorganic chemist trained, he became interested in casting, and he perfected what's called the ceramic shell process, which you can get into later. And he received a newsletter from where I was an apprentice, because we published all the technology, how to make sculpture, how to make bronze castings. And he came to New Zealand to visit, got a QE2 grant to study, to go overseas. It was kind of industrial espionage, really. He would charm the people wherever he went, and he went to lots and lots of foundries all over the world and get into the back rooms and see how they did stuff, And he came home eventually and perfected the whole process, which was being revived all over the world, bit by bit. And when he got it under control, the industrial stainless steel foundries and everything paid good money to learn how to do it.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's incredible to me that, it was the 80s and it was almost a lost art in New Zealand. I mean,
it's almost a lost art all over the world.
That's really surprising because it is quite an ancient art.
It goes back thousands and thousands of years.
So it hadn't been, it's interesting that it hadn't been kind of passed forward, it wasn't being...
Well, it only fell out of fashion sort of beginning of the 20th century. Modern art and all the movements shied away from any craftsmanship or hard, complicated things. They wanted to be free, and a whole new range of work started with the Dadists in the 20s in Europe and spread all over the world, where you could just call anything sculpture, urinal. Marcel Duchamp called a urinal, sculpture. So all that sort of fancy stuff, bronze casting was out of fashion.
Yeah, went by the wayside, which is incredible, really. Yeah, and luckily it came back. I mean, thank God.
Well, my gallerist, Rodney Kirk Smith, he actually thought that it was the lost wax process. So it was lost. But it's actually the lost wax process. That's part of the process. So the wax is burnt away in the mold, and then the bronze replaces where the wax was.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
So that was funny.
Yeah. So it just goes to show, I mean, it was kind of lost, almost lost.
It was very, very close.
More ways than one, yeah. So in 1989, you took the big step of becoming a full-time sculptor.
That's right. I mean, it wasn't a stepping from one platform to another. It was a little bit like standing on a a piece of wood in the middle of a swamp. I had a job that didn't pay well, but we were doing important work, getting people to make bronzes. Excuse me, and I was making my own at the same time, so it was worth my while. And then I decided that I needed to focus fully on myself. But that wasn't, I'd shown professionally here with Rodney Kirk Smith, but hardly any sales. So I had to do all sorts of stuff. I left being a foundryman and started doing props for advertising and, anything and everything, working on little films, making stuff, and I don't know, anything and everything, designs, awards, these sorts of things.
Medals.
Medals was more of a artistic thing. Medals are small coin-like sculptures that were really invented by the Romans or the Greeks or whatever, and they disappeared, but then they reappeared in the Renaissance, and then they spread across Europe, became very popular, and by the 19th century they were too popular, and they were turning into advertising really, but they were exquisitely made. And then they fell out of fashion. But then in between the wars, a group got together to make art medals, and that's still going. It's a French name, but I can't pronounce it. I studied Spanish. And it's still going. And it's an international institute for medals, or not institute, but federation. And they have every 2 years international shows. And we started a group here, and it's been going since 1989. And we've made medals and had shows. It's coming up to 30 years or longer now that we've been together. And we celebrated the 25th at Wallace Art Center, the huge exhibition, hundreds and hundreds of works.
So you're actually making medals for a certain purpose, or you're getting commissioned to make a medal
I've
for
been
something?
commissioned, yes. But generally it's just like any art form today. Artists have their own issues, and what they do is just translate into a different format. And it's generally quite flat. It's like a coin. You have to learn how to model in low relief, which means it looks round, but it's actually flat, which is very interesting. That's probably why I did it, just so, how do you do that sort of thing? It's interesting.
And how do you do that sort of thing?
Very carefully. It can be very tedious, but you just stick at it like everything.
It looks like sort of embossing almost, some sort of embossing.
You have to somehow get the feeling, you have to get everything in perspective. You start with at the flattest areas and work upwards, but we're talking about millimeters or less.
And how are you actually working with the metal?
Well, you just have anything like a block of wood or whatever, and a piece of plywood or something, and then you get plasticine, which is a clay that doesn't dry, but it's mixed with oil rather than water, so it's an artificial clay, and then you can just work on it for hours and hours and hours. It doesn't dry up. And you can even use magnifying glasses sometimes, but you have a light that rakes across from the side, and that gives you can see the texture and how, it's very, very delicate. It's just like any art form. You just spend hours and hours until it's done.
So that clay piece is basically the mold.
Well, it's actually called a pattern or an original.
Right.
And then a mold is a negative. That's, you make a mold from a positive. The original is a positive.
Yeah.
Then generally, you can work in plaster, which is a liquid. You mix a liquid from dry ingredients, and then you pour it over the top and trying to get all the bubbles out different ways. And then it goes off very quickly. Say 20 minutes, it's hard. And then you very carefully separate the mold from the original, and then you've got a negative of what was positive.
Right.
And then you can use that to pour wax into. You got to make two sides, obviously, but you pour the wax into this negative mold, and you get a wax that you then perfect back the way it was, because there's always mistakes and everything.
Yeah. So are you actually carving the wax?
Well, it's more like modeling or carving, depending on the type of wax. If it's a hard wax, you can carve it, but generally it's a softer wax, and you model it just like anything else, like a sculpture, and then that's cast into metal, generally bronze, but you can do silver or whatever, and you have to make another mold. It's very complicated.
It's really complicated.
Sculpture is very complicated. You make an original, then you make a mold of that, which is sort of
The negative.
intermediate, quick grab of what it is. Then you get a casting from that first mold, which generally is plaster or something. And then you bring it back to as good as it was. And then you make a more permanent mold, generally out of some sort of rubber, silicon rubber with plaster backing so it doesn't flop around. And then it starts all over again. You make another wax from that mold, and then you have to clean it up to look the way you want it. And that is taken to a foundry where they make another mold. And then they put it in a substance that hardens under heat, and that heat makes the wax melt away. That's the lost wax
Right,
part.
yeah.
And then there's a negative or hollow that's just like the wax that you made inside this ceramic mold, but it's empty. And then you pour the molten metal in there.
Right. So that could be bronze
or silver or whatever.
aluminium.
Yep, aluminium, whatever.
And that's melted liquid.
Yeah, and then it hardens, and then you have to destroy that last mold to get the metal out. And then you have to clean up where the metal is poured into it and cut it back the way it was.
Wow.
So again, you have to bring back the sculpture the way it was at the beginning.
That's a really huge process.
Very complicated.
And do many sculptors, using those kind of materials, do the whole process themselves, or do most artists now take it to a foundry?
Well, there's not a lot of people doing it, full stop. And depending on your financial situation or your age, like I'm getting a bit older, I'm happy to pay someone to actually do everything, the pouring of the metal, the casting, and all those. There's a tiny part of it. I make the original, I make the molds, I give them the wax, they cast it, and then it's a rough casting. They give it back to me. I pay for them to pour the metal, basically.
Yeah.
And then I have to grind and sand and hammer and weld and everything back. And so I do everything other than the casting. So it's a little sliver of the whole process, but it costs a lot. It costs a lot of money. And the time you spend on it, that's really the expense.
I can imagine. And it's such a specialized, industry, isn't it? I guess it's probably hard to find the right people for you to do it.
You have to be nice and use them as much as you can to keep them going. Because there's not much money in it.
Yeah, and we don't want to lose those people doing that.
No,
because
you don't.
There we go again. It all becomes lost.
And a lot of those people I help train. So, unless they start doing the same.
Yeah, well, hopefully they will do what you did and pass it on.
Well,
pass on the skills.
Yeah, it needs to be done.
Yeah, it'd be really sad if it started to disappear.
Yeah. It's a mark of civilization, really.
Yeah, other things coming up instead. But, that's the thing with art, like any sort of fashion, I guess, it comes around, doesn't it?
That's right.
So hopefully, it will come and have its day. But it's still, it's very popular, isn't it, that kind of sculpture?
Well, it's a lasting object. It's a noble metal, not a precious metal. Bronze is a noble metal, which is a nice term. And it is attractive. It weathers well outside. It needs to be serviced. There's no such thing as a service-free material. If it's outside, it's going to have to be cleaned up and from time to time, but it will last for millennia. They're still finding Greek things and Chinese things.
Yeah, which is amazing that you're creating something that has such longevity.
Yeah, I am a link in a chain that goes back so far. The Bronze Age, which is millennia BC.
That's right. Yeah. It's incredible. So, Jim, after that time making medals and, coming out of the foundry work, you ended up with some commissions like awards and that kind of thing?
Yeah, along with everything, making normal sculpture that was shown in galleries, medals were in that same arena, small scale, but you have to do all sorts of things. And I began to get phone calls from people wanting awards, things that they would give their employees or their best clients, things like that. That was intriguing, and it did help pay the bills. And I made all these little things, some of which were quite prestigious. The Olympic Committee hired me to do something. I made one year the America's Cup medals that the sailors were presented like the Olympics at the end of the regatta. I've done things for the music industry, like the Hall of Fame Award, New Zealand Music Hall of Fame Awards. So, it can be prestigious, and it doesn't pay a lot because it's only a few medals a year, or whatever. So that was a way of part of a suite of disparate measures.
But they're still it's very beautiful sculptures.
Yeah, some of them were, I mean, I'm really proud of some of the designs. Some were incredibly complicated to get across the, even begin.
And did they give you the design, or did you come up with that?
Sometimes I was given a design, but those were the less interesting works. But sometimes I had to go through a dozen designs to get one at the end to make.
So you'd give them your design idea?
Yeah, well, I'd send them drawings and drawings. Eventually, I'd sort of get fed up and either give up or sometimes make something three-dimensional version, and sometimes that seemed to make them say yes. Right.
And did they give you a brief?
They'd give you a brief, but it was brief.
Yeah. A brief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, you have to be quite sort of tenacious to hang in there for 12 different drawings.
Desperation is a good motivator.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so moving on from there, I mean, you were a full-time sculptor. You obviously started to become a little bit more known and making sculptures and objects for different spaces.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. You're just, as I said, it's fairly desperate, and you do this. You have an exhibition occasionally, not a lot of sales, and you get discouraged, but you keep going. I think a lot of success is just basically you never stop. Some filmmakers win the Oscars and all that sort of stuff, but it's because they stuck at it that they get, put in the Hall of Fame or whatever they call it. So, it's the artist's job is to continue to mature, not lose your way, not give up or fall into an easy routine that is not really interesting. So,
not really feeding your passion.
Yeah.
And did you feel like it was something that you just had to do? You just needed to be making that kind of work?
It's mysterious. It's almost as the real mystery is where the ideas come from and all that. But yeah, my early love of botany, the joke of not seeing the trees not seeing the forest for the trees, I actually suddenly realized at the same time as I was feeling as I knew the bush well enough here to make comment or to use them as a metaphor, I started making botanical work, and I try to have all the ideas that artists have, but expressed using native trees. The other point of difference is that I make them quite beautiful, because I am trying to get New Zealanders to recognize what's under their nose, that they have the most unique forest ecology on the planet.
Yeah.
It goes back to the very beginning of life, still here, but most people just say trees are trees, they're everywhere, right? So part of the job of making things beautiful is to express my admiration, but also to get people to wake up and see these things, how valuable, the treasure, priceless treasure that's here.
Yeah, and it's so unique, isn't it, what you find in New Zealand? Yeah, and it's a good lesson, I think, for all of us. Stop and smell the roses, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have been, responding to nature for 20 years now, haven't you, with your sculpture?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back further than that, but specifically looking at New Zealand trees and using different parts, leaves, branches, the vine, the way that everything's put together is very interesting to a sculptor to see the forms and shapes and how it all twines around or whatever. What
is the actual process? I mean, how do you decide what you're going to make, or, what parts of nature or part of the forest you're going to use?
Well, to me, it's intuitive. I'm used to going in the bush and observing and looking up and looking down and putting it together. And certain things just capture your fancy, just like personalities. And certain people you're happy to know and you want to know them better. It's the same for me in the bush. I see certain things that I just stop. Sometimes I'm just completely just floored by this amazing shape, and it changes my life. I become fascinated, and I can't get enough, and I keep making variations in different scales and different sizes, because there's certain trees here that change shape. The leaves, when they're young, are completely different when they are mature. So all these stages it goes through. So if you really study something, you can spend months just getting the different types organized and understood. And then with sculpture, you have different scales. You can make what are called maquettes, which is a fancy word for model. And then you make a model and you work out what you want to do in a small scale. So you can do lots and play around and not spend a lot of money or wait a huge amount of time because it's tiny.
And what are you using for the model?
Generally wax. I model with wax. I model with clay. I model with all kinds of stuff. But wax is self-supporting. It's quite strong and it's very light. So if you make something out of clay, it dries up and breaks apart. Plasticine, which is similar to wax, doesn't stick together. It just it would crumble as well because it has no support for itself. Whereas wax is stretchy. You can get it warm in your hands and twist it and all sorts of things. You can add to it. You can just weld it on, cut it in half, just like steel, or bronze. You can manipulate it, add to it, take away.
That's amazing. And what form does that wax come in? Is it a block?
Yeah, the modern waxes are not natural waxes; they're petrochemical waxes, and you can buy them from petrochemical companies. But foundry supply houses do exist because in industry, there's a big industry, so they have materials. So it's really just industrial materials. But you can play with these things. You can make your own formulas. You can use natural things depending on the use. It's you can vary things, and there are ancient recipes that are ridiculously long. And how did they think of using that stuff?
Yeah, but it'd be nice to work with something like, beeswax that's got that beautiful smell. I don't know if it could be actually used for a model. But
it can be, but it's it's not as useful or easy to use.
It's soft.
Some beekeepers got very excited when they said, they saw they were working next door on a hive, and they popped in. My wife's very friendly to people. They popped in and said, wax, and they got all excited. But I said, no, this is industrial.
Yeah, it's a shame that you can't use something more natural,
You could.
Yeah. And so I'm just kind of picturing you in the forest, Jim. Do you actually collect things? And take
I
them
collect
home?
things. One time I was sitting drawing. I've been part of drawing groups, and this was the end of year party get together, and it was in the bush, along the edge of a bush, and most people went down to the beach and had a lovely visit, and I sat down in the bush and started drawing a magnificent ancient kauri. And then I looked down on the ground next to me and saw this incredible leaf, and it was the Tanekaha leaf, which I was obsessed with for many years. And it was just the most amazing leaf I'd ever seen. It's quite prevalent. It's a very common tree that's called the celery pine by the settlers. It looks kind of like celery. It's a stem that has lots of little leaflets on each side. The branches come away from the trunks, and all these things are really interesting to a sculptor. Sometimes the leaves wrap around like a Nico palm. They have these amazing cup-like shapes that wrap around the trunks and leave the rings on the trunks, and all the way it fits together, the fruit and how it's all connected, the shapes are amazing.
It's incredible, isn't it? So much inspiration in our forest and our bush.
Yeah. And to me, each one is like human beings. They're a community. We're a community. We work together. We should work together and support each other more, because the forests are not at war. Nature is not at war. It's a cooperative environment. Sure, there's things crowding out others, but they help each other. Trees now, they're finding that trees communicate. They look after their young. They look after each other. It's a vast network of cooperation. So it's a real lesson for human beings to say, wait a minute, we're making some wrong decisions.
Yeah,
and that's another one of my core things, is to try to lure people by beauty to consider these underlying important issues of cooperation versus competition, or warfare versus the spread of life. It's not taking over. You can look at it in an aggressive sense, but it's not really that way.
That's so good, and there's so many of us who need to learn those lessons.
Yeah, especially now. I'm a quiet voice, and I'm not really a political artist. I'm not making protest work that's quite brutal. It shows the suffering. I mean, that's important, but my way of doing things is to quietly give some sort of a hint towards the way things could be or should be, or whatever.
Yeah, which is great, and that's important work.
Well, it's what I do. It's taken a long time, and this is kind of the way I've worked. You have to work out what you want to do and how you want to do it, and it has to be fed from your heart to sustain you to keep going. If you do something that's maybe sells well or something, you run out of steam. If it's just a commercial success, I would just wither and die if suddenly I was a Manhattan darling.
Imagine it.
Yeah, I'd run out of ideas in about 2 months. Or
Yeah.
Because you have to just be a machine gun.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so lovely to hear you speaking of what inspires you, because it's obviously such a passion.
Well, why do we have to conquer the world? Live a good life, do what you really want to do, feed your passion, feed your children, and just have a good life, and treat yourself well and your neighbors, and love your family and friends, and what more do you need?
I know, I
what
agree.
More do you do?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And it is, as you get a little bit older, you do have a better sort of view on your life and the life that you want to lead. It does change as you get older, I find. Well, it has for
Definitely.
me. Yeah. And in a good way, I think you become a bit more reflective, and you don't need as much sort of materialistically, but sort of more in your soul.
Well, we haven't had the artist's life. We haven't had an opulent life. You have to learn how to live simply if you want to do what you want to do, and you can build on that, but you never should lose sight of the core of what you're doing. If possible. It's very rare. I can't believe that I live the life that I do, growing up in America, where it's just dog eat dog. No, if you don't have a good job, you have no insurance. If you get sick, you have to sell your house. You'll probably die and you'll be broke,
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. We're very lucky in New Zealand.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Most of my friends and family just think, how the hell did you come to New Zealand in 1981? I just followed my nose. I met a Kiwi asking for a job, came down and decided I wanted to stay, and, made a life.
The rest is history. Yeah, and you met your lovely wife, Bunny.
That's right.
She's a New Zealander.
Yep. She was my landlady.
Was she?
Yeah, originally, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you have to break all the rules once.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
And she's sitting up in our house having a cup of tea, reading a book while we talk, which is nice. I told my husband I want to be called Bunny. I think it's the coolest name ever.
Yeah. Well, if you look at her little pictures when she was, 6 years old, she was a bunny. She earned the name.
Really cute. That's adorable. Yeah. So just back to your art. I mean, you obviously are making sculpture out of bronze mostly at the moment.
Mostly, yeah.
But you also use other materials like concrete and fibre sometimes, and ceramics obviously is part of that process, and wood and stone. So can you tell us, when you were responding to nature in this way, is it mostly bronze, or are you exploring different materials?
Well, I have a high amount of training in bronze. It needs to suit the idea and the object. Bronze can go green, it can go brown, it can go black. So there's a lot of colors in nature. It's trees especially. Flowers, kind of get out of control. You can't get reds. You can get a few colors, rusty sort of colors. So it's a limited palette. So bronze suits what I do, but if I need something to express an idea, I'll use it. Like a block of concrete is a good idea to have a little sprout splitting it or something, because nature, the will of nature will it's relentless. The drop of water will wear away anything if it continues to drop. And the little tiny pressure that a sprouting seed exerts on where it's sitting, it will crack a rock in half, So these are ideas. So I use what's appropriate. I use gold. I use whatever I think will give the idea the final zest, or emphasize something. If it's covered in gold, that is the thing that is the center of the idea. I've had heart surgery, so I had a valve replaced. So I made a heart sculpture that the part of it that represented the valve was covered in gold, and the sprout was coming out. A new life was coming out from that golden valve.
That's beautiful. And when you make something like that that's so deeply personal, would you ever give it away? Was it something?
I gave one to the hospital.
Oh, that's a nice idea.
It's in the heart, one of the heart wards
at Auckland Hospital.
Yeah.
How amazing! That's a really nice thing to do.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I've had heart surgery as well with a valve. So there we are. We share something in common.
We can trade
heart stories.
Heart stories. I always wanted my scar to be the shape of a lightning bolt.
I might ask my surgeon if he can
That's
accommodate.
Right. I didn't think of it in time.
Oh, that's interesting. We can talk more about that later.
Yeah. Okay.
So just back to your sculpture, which is, obviously you have this exhibition coming up at Artist Gallery, which is opening on the 2nd of August and closing on the 22nd. And all the work that you've done for this show is, nature. It's all native.
Yep, it's all native. As I said, I came to New Zealand and was just completely fascinated to the point of mouth-opening awe at the types of trees here that are found nowhere. I mean, they are found elsewhere, but the ecology as a unit, evolved community is only here. So I think when I see an interesting plant, I want it to be a native because it's just appropriate. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to portray. So all the works in the artist gallery are native trees, generally leaves or trunks, and the way they behave. There's a climbing fern called mange that is one of my fascinations, and it is a very unusual plant, a fern that sprouts from the ground, climbs up anything and everything, every bush and whatever. It climbs to the very top of the bush, the tallest tree, to get to the sun. And they look like vines, but the vines are actually the midrib of the leaf. If you think of a fern, you've got a stem with all the little leaflets coming out the side. Well, those vines, those leaves, those single leaves from the floor of the bush to the top of the tallest tree, 30 meters. One leaf can be 30 meters long or longer.
Wow.
So it's an amazing plant. So it's one sculpture is called Homage to an Unsung Hero of Adaptation, because this is a very interesting plant that has changed and adapted to where it lives. So that's one of the great lessons that we could learn, how to adapt to changing environment, to changing political systems. I mean, we have to learn how to, learn from nature, basically.
Yeah. I think nature is adapting in a lot better ways than humans.
It's being
really
forced. Humans have forced nature to,
But it's like humans always take a while to adapt. It takes a long time to sort of register that they actually need to start adapting. But that is a beautiful sculpture, that one you're talking about, and it's so sort of delicate, isn't it?
It's very delicate, but it's quite robust. And we're talking about bronze rods and copper and bronze castings. It's all welded together. Very strong, but delicate.
Yeah,
it will
looks
bend.
delicate.
You can't climb up.
No.
You've got to keep the toddlers away from climbing.
Yeah.
But it'll last. It hangs from a tree or the side of a house. Somehow it looks really good in architectural human space,
It would do.
moving from the inside of the house to the garden. That's that's
that'd be
what
beautiful.
Kiwis like, and it will stand in from a tree or the house. And I've watched it carefully over the past year in gale force conditions, and it's just a very, very intricate but delicate looking, and the wind passes mostly straight through it, and it's also on swivels, so the whole thing turns in the wind and will go up and down with the limb of the tree that it's attached, and it does this amazing dance in
beautiful.
the wind and the storm.
How
Beautiful to
amazing.
look.
Yeah, so it's like a sort of feat in engineering as well as...
It's all carefully attached, very laborious, hundreds and hundreds of little bits that are all brazed together by hand.
Wow.
You just have to keep going. You think, I'll get it. I'll do all these leaves and it'll be fine. And then it's like, that's not enough. Got to make more.
Really?
Start all over again, making more and more leaves. And then you just...
And of all the sculptures of that fern turning and sort of hanging?
Not all of them. I make wall pieces. I make funny little sprouts from rocks and things that are small, because it's fascinating. All these different environments and stages, all of them are equally interesting, I think. So some just screw on the wall like a painting.
Yeah, and they look amazing because they are so sort of sculptural and interesting to look at. And then, you have like the Puriri leaf, which is quite sort of solid and robust in comparison, isn't it? And that sits on a plinth or a table.
I do make large scale 2.5, 3 meter leaves and things that are, very imposing. So I like to go from one end to the other in scale. So at the moment, the Puriri leaf is most interesting. It's very complicated. It's 5 petals, 3 to 5 petals or more. I mean, petals, leaflets that are shaped like a hand. It's called the palmate leaf. So it's got all these leaflets radiating from a central point. And that's quite massive and quite heavy for me. And that'll be outside the gallery on a plinth, a steel plinth. And it'll be over 2 meters tall altogether.
Wow.
So, they have to kind of upscale just to give the stretch of the process and, to make it interesting. Lots of little tiny things, not very interesting.
Yeah, it's nice to have a sort of a combination of different
Yeah,
scale.
like I said, you make little models and then you make them in bigger.
Yeah.
If it looks right, if it has a reason to be that size. An imposing leaf has a message. It's like adaptation again. It's being bent violently by the wind, but it's not breaking. And it's also, there's a tiny sprouting leaf that's kind of looks like it's being protected by the big leaf. It's almost like looking you in the eye and telling you not to mess with this little baby.
Oh, that's so
like
good.
like a feminine, protective.
Maternal.
Yeah.
They're very, very beautiful. I mean, the show is gorgeous. I've seen a lot of, some of the works.
Thank you. I'm still working, so I'm a little bit tense.
Yeah, well, I bet it's always that sort of lead up to an exhibition. It's never easy, is it?
No.
Oh, well, that is going to be, incredible show to see. I'm definitely going to come to your opening.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And just about that, the round ones too,
The medals.
The round ones that are in the show.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's kind of an old. See, I was an abstract sculptor like everyone else. So I still, and that is a skill, learning how to make compositions that are just what they are. So I kind of stepped back and included something from the past. I took an object, in this case, the top of a 44-gallon drum, a lid, and then I fashioned it so that I could use it and made a plaster mold. And then I turned that mold upside down, and it made this round reservoir with a little, like a moat or where there's a protruding rim. And when it's upside down, it's like a little channel. So I very, very slowly and carefully took liquid wax. This is how I used to make sculptures when they were abstract, and pour very slowly onto this plaster mold and on a slight tilt, so that the wax would run down these little channels on the sides, but also form these beautiful cloud-like shapes where you were pouring it. And you move it around just a little bit. So it's kind of a combination of skill, of directing, but also completely up to the forces of gravity and the plasticity or the liquidity that wax solidifies. And then once you have to learn how to stop.
Yeah.
Let that cool, and then we cast that completely abstract shape that's just by chance into bronze, and then I fashion a sprout of that climbing fern, the mange coming out of it. So that's the way they begin. They make these beautiful little circular clusters of leaves, very beautiful. And in this show, there's one that I think is like a bush right up to the edge of a bay. So I call it Rocky Bay. So there's like these rocks and bush-clad hill or cliffs right on the beach, and then the flowing arms of the sculptor that form this incomplete asymmetric circle are the outcroppings of a bay.
Yeah.
So the sprouts coming out of that.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I wondered what you were thinking with that one. It's because it's a little bit different. It has a slight sort of more abstract.
Yeah, I had this idea to use that sprout, because you see them in the bush, quite spectacular. These little rounds like a fairy ring or something.
Yeah.
And how do I present that if I wanted to present that as a sculpture? And then I had this thought of a puddle, and next to the puddle, on the edge of the walk or the bush or whatever, there'd be a sprout. And then I said, I used to make little wax things that look a little bit like rocks and bush. And then I thought of that little pond sort of thing. So I made the mold where the wax would run around the edge.
I love that. Well, you're obviously a person who's always thinking and noticing things.
Yeah, my way of working is like a slow cooker, a pot where you just add ingredients and it bubbles away, and you go, it's not quite right. And you let it cook for another day, And another way of looking at it is as a computer that's open, of all these different tabs are left open. Like, I saw that leaf, and I saw this stem, and I remember this environment where they were growing and how they looked, how they worked together. And they just stay open, these ideas. And eventually, if I'm lucky, they connect. And there's a really interesting idea that makes it all come together.
Yeah.
So,
or you tap into the different areas.
It never stops.
Yeah.
That's why artists are a little bit sort of distracted and sort of somewhere else.
Yeah. Your mind's always going, which is a great thing in lots of ways. Yeah. And so just moving on to, you've done obviously a lot of large scale commissions, public art, and you've also participated in the big sculpture shows like Sculptor in the Gardens, and you have work at Brick Bay's Sculpture Park and Matakana.
Sculpture on the Gulf and the Gardens, and all these things are okay. Make a proposal, and if you get accepted, they give you a tiny little stipend.
Yeah.
But so it's a huge production by the artist to put forward to be part of the show.
That's right.
Sometimes can be very rewarding to meet the artists and be part of the group. Yeah.
And do you enjoy those large scale installation type?
I do,
works?
but you need to work these ideas up in my little slow cooker, to really, you've got to take the pick of the litter. You can have 10 ideas or more, and you need to think carefully as to one that's really the strongest one in order to invest all the time and energy, because it is hundreds of hours and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to make these things.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So it's a year's project.
Yeah,
really.
It's a lot of money to invest.
Yeah, and it's the time that's most of the expense is just hours and hours. You just sit there and you think, I've got to make all of these, and it just, whatever you get done today is less than you'll have to do tomorrow.
But it's tough on artists, isn't it, when you are waiting for the potential sale at the end of the project?
Yeah, it's kind of an odd way of a commercial situation. What shop has all the works arriving for free in the door and placed in the showroom, and the merchant does nothing. I mean, maybe he has to pay rent and all that sort of stuff, but there's no outlay for the inventory. I don't know who invented this system.
Yeah.
Who came up with this deal, because they get, a fair whack of the price.
Yeah. You have your work at the beautiful Brick Bay Sculpture Gardens near Matakana.
I do.
What do you have there, and what do you like about having your work in that space?
Well, Brick Bay is set up by a very successful family, and they have this, they're very prominent business people and all that, but they have this amazing childlike appreciation for the bush. And I hit a chord stumbling around on site with Richard Disbury, who's one of the owners, and he and his wife. And we were just like children sliding up and down this hillside. And I was always going, what's this? What's that? All these weird, I love ferns and all these sort of so-called primitive plants like lichen, and there's all these amazing things up there. And I'd never seen them because it was kind of a swampy area, and you don't normally walk through swamps because it's difficult. And this was a man-made sort of lake that backed up. The creek backed up, so it was very, very wet. So there were all these amazing things there. It was just an explosion, a whole range of things I'd never seen. So, and they had a vision to make this sculpture park trail, and they wanted to have a vineyard. They wanted to have all these different things when they bought the property, and they've done it.
They've done amazing.
It's so proud and so amazing that they've done it, and to be part of it is a real, honor.
Yeah. And did they commission you? Did they commission?
Yes, they invited me up there, and that's when we did that stumbling around the bush,
And how did you choose what you were going to make?
Well, I've made several things, one of which was a hanging. Again, this is probably the first hanging sculpture from the trees. and it was of a lichen, this amazing lichen that hangs from the trees, and some of the strands were 3 meters long, and there was tiny, beautiful white sort of soft, this almost like velvet, this tiny little, but intricate, and they were just amazing. And so I made this sculpture that kind of like it. It was stainless steel, a wire that was bent and twisted and brazed together, and hundreds of these hanging. It was about 2.5, 3 meters long, and you couldn't see it.
Really?
You could look straight at it and you couldn't see it because it just blended in.
Oh, wow.
Perfect, philosophical achievement.
Yeah.
Terrible commercial idea, but it instantly sold.
Really?
So it broke all, it was just like, what?
Wow. So that in those with the Brick Bay Sculpture Park, it's not always just permanent sculptures that are part of that
They're
park.
not permanent. None of them. All of them for sale.
They're all for sale.
Yeah, they're all for sale. And that way they change.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah. Mm.
Cool.
So they've had some of mine for a long time. So some of them look like they're permanent. So I haven't sold everything. I've sold a few.
Oh, that's
and the
great.
newest one is the first attempt at making mange. And it took long enough, and I said that's good enough, and it looks right. It was only it was only like 1.5 meters something. It wasn't that big, but that was it. That was where I should stop. I just had this very strong emotional knowledge that it was finished. So I took that up, and of course it's very difficult to see. It blends in. I tried to make the colors a little bit more bluish than the normal leaves, so that it would oh, it's that, see it. And I found as good a place to hang it as I could. And some people tell me they could see it. They have saw it. So that's up there now.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. But then it's nice for people to know that it's there, and then they can go looking for it.
The photographer they chose did the most beautiful photography. She must have been up on ladders or something to get right up close. And I was just amazed at the photographs. So they published that's on their website and everything, so you can see it before you go up there if you can find it.
Yeah, then you can find it like a treasure hunt. Yeah, and is that actually part of a tree hanging?
It's hanging from
in
a tree. Yeah, and they're put on with Velcro, just wrapped. There's a wood pigeon outside the window.
Yeah, Kiriru comes to see me often.
On the seeds and the
I like to think he's coming to
palms.
see me, but it may have something to do with the
Might
food.
be the fruit.
Shame. He's so beautiful. Yeah.
So I attach things to trees using just a loop of Velcro. So it's very, very gentle on the tree, and then the Velcro is very strong. It will not. If you make a loop out of Velcro and try to pull it apart, it's almost like handcuffs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then I just put a little loop of metal, like stainless steel or whatever, and then close the Velcro around it, and then everything hangs from that.
Wow, cool. And then you've also got work at the Botanical Gardens in Auckland.
Yeah, the Botanical Gardens are, again, this beautiful idealistic philosophy about what they do. They use no poisons or anything. It's completely organic, but also they wanted to have a botanical and sculpture gardens. A very long-range, radical vision, because the first show was back in 2005, and they already had this worked out. They always, way back then, they wanted it, and Richard Matheson, a friend of mine, is an amazing hangs work. It's his job, hanging work as well as a sculptor. He saw the building, and when it was just finished, and he said, "This is a perfect gallery indoors. We should have an exhibition." So we sent word around to all our friends, sculptors, and said, "Do you have any work that we can just put on display?" So it was a pop-up exhibition before Christchurch invented the word pop-up shows. And we put it up, and it looked amazing. Indoor, big works indoors, small works indoors at that gallery. And the friends who they're interested, they want to support the gardens, quite a big group. They're president of wherever you call it, ran up to us and said, "This is what we've been wanting to do for years. We've got all the resource consents, but we don't know any sculptors." So,
Really?
Yeah. So Richard and I sat down in the first meeting and laid out the way we wanted it to be, all suited from the viewpoint of the sculptors.
Brilliant.
And then I said, okay, I want to withdraw from being part of the organizing because I want to submit. I want to have work in the shows.
Yeah.
So Richard carried on for 20 years. But basically, they have this vision, and it's been unfolding. And in all the works at the gardens are gifted by the friends. They have a subscription. They pay for the first one. And then every year or every 2 years, they buy at least one work from the exhibition to be permanently installed.
Oh, brilliant.
And all the proceeds from sales go into that fund. So it's self-perpetuating. So Auckland has this really, really important sculpture collection that's growing constantly. And also it places sculpture in public for everyone to see all the time. And 500,000 people go through the gardens every summer. So there's an entire generation that have been going out there for this nearly 20 years, seeing works in public, and it's all free. It's all free. You can it's there. And that is a generation that's growing up seeing sculpture in public, just like Europeans.
Yeah.
So it's a sea change.
Yeah.
Sea change.
Yeah. And it's such a gift.
Yeah.
To Auckland.
And they're so supportive. I mean, they get people to dig the holes and pour the concrete for the footings, and they have engineering firms and all that give their time for free to help pull it off. And the thing that's good for sculptors, especially because it's a 3-month exhibition, whereas you spend a year making these things, and it's out there for 3 months.
Which is amazing.
Normally it's like 3 days or 2 weekends or 2 weeks with the weekends on each end.
So it's 3 months, a new exhibition every year for 3 months.
Every other year.
Every other year.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. And what work do you have there at the moment?
They bought a giant Tanekaha leaf, and that was the leaf I found lying in the bush when I was drawing that picture. The Tanekaha leaf, which is an amazingly beautiful leaf, a stem with little leaflets on all the way up the length and one at the top. And it's 2.5 meters tall, big bronze that hangs on the side of the big, beautiful building like a brooch, a person wearing a beautiful brooch.
Gorgeous.
This building, it just looks fantastic.
And against the concrete, isn't it? Is it? It's the concrete
against the
wall.
concrete wall.
Yeah, which looks so good.
Yeah.
That's on your blog post, so people can check that out. Yeah, that's really stunning. And I love the bronze with the concrete, and then also some wood in that building as well. It's
beautifully
it really
designed.
works.
The columns holding up the inside of the atrium and everything look like trees. They're based on trees. They have these beautiful swelling wooden columns, and then at the top these splayed like the limbs, branches of a tree holding up the roof.
Wow.
Amazing.
Gorgeous. Oh, well, your work seems to fit into that kind of environment so beautifully.
Yeah, and they're just so supportive, and they believe in it. And the friends, they do all the work, volunteers. They just working their hearts out, and it's beautifully done, and it's amazing. It's amazing. People should go out there. It is a little bit out of town, but it's right next to the motorway.
Yeah,
if you're going south, so
it's well worth it. I'll put a link to that in your blog post as well. Okay, well, we are up to our final 4 questions.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go, Jim. Who is your favourite artist of all time, and how have they influenced your work?
Well, there's a lot of the all-timies, but timers that go way back. But the one that really, really gets me is Isamu Noguchi. And I noticed in your lounge up in your house, you have a Noguchi coffee table. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Now, he was ethnic Japanese. His father was Japanese, mother was European. He was born in America. And his whole life, he felt like he was an outsider. In America, he was Japanese, and he'd go live in Japan, and he was, American, back and forth. But his work is the ideal for me because he lived for the work. He put all the time needed into making the works perfect. And he didn't follow trends. He did what he wanted to do in his whole life, and he worked well into his 70s, maybe 80s, and made gigantic stone pieces that were just thousands of hours of pounding away, and big bronzes, and the most delicate he made paper lanterns. That was a commercial thing. He makes these beautiful, new design, the traditional Japanese lanterns. And all kinds of stuff. Everything that he made was just perfect. Lots of abstract work through lots of different decades and styles, using all kinds of materials. And I heard him speak twice, and he was well into his 70s, but he had this energy, this little man, slim, but he was like made out of tool steel, like a whip. He had this energy that just came out of him when he spoke. Amazing.
How incredible. Wow. I'll put that link to his
Yes.
work.
He's had a lot of big exhibitions in London and all over the world in the last few years. He felt as though he was overlooked. I mean, he was showing with the great people in the 30s, the great people in the 50s, in New York City, and showing all over the world, big commissions and all kinds. He designed playgrounds. He did so much, and yet he never was, never made it to top. He was just sort of a sideliner.
And as a sculptor, what do you think is your biggest challenge?
I think just to keep going, really. The one thing that can get you down is feeling as though you're being left out, and the publicity and how people are trumpeted, and you've been working and you make the work, and that's what you need to remember, to calm down and just do the work. That's the important thing. All this other stuff is distraction. If you want to be an artist, do the work and keep doing the work. Nothing else is important. You can't be an artist unless you do the work.
So true. And what would you say to your younger artistic self?
I think network more earlier. Be involved with people. You or I mentioned about being part of these outdoor exhibitions. My wife, Bunny, she noticed that when I started drawing with a group, suddenly I would come home all invigorated and lively and happy and talking. So being around fellow artists, making associations, like working together as a group in any way, even if it's just practicing. Drawing is what I started, that she noticed the difference. It's just like running to an athlete. Just draw. You should draw all the time. And that just gave me a community, and it felt so good. I met all these amazing women that were 20, 30 years older than me, and they've been working all their lives. And of course, hardly any of them had ever been recognized. But they were just the most amazing women from, the generations before I came to New Zealand, when you had no biscuits, the job they hated most was filling the tins.
Oh my God, no biscuits.
You had to make them, had to have them waiting for people came around for a cup of tea. You had to have the bin full.
Yeah, but it's so true, isn't it? That network is really important, I think.
Keeps you alive.
Yeah,
you're not alone, and safety in numbers too.
Exactly.
Sculptors have to be friendly because they need people to help lift and move stuff.
Yeah, and I imagine that your sort of band of sculptors, you do help each other quite a bit.
Oh yeah, and also if you show together, then it's not just you, out there. in the wind hanging.
And last question, Jim, is a big one. Why do you make what you make?
You take that in a lot of different ways. I can't believe I can do what I do. You growing up in a dog eat dog, money is everything, business is everything. USA, being an artist is a young fellow looking at it. It's just like that's a suspicious looking job, or how can you have a career to do that? So I studied biology, thinking that, maybe there's a job there somewhere. And I was fascinated by the sea. I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then I had this amazing professor that showed me the forest, So I can't believe I can do it. So moving down here and being able to do it, I had to work 2 jobs, art and a way to support myself. All artists have 2 or 3 jobs. And a family, kids, young kids and all that stuff, house, blah, blah, blah. So I have this opportunity and I cannot waste it. So there is a personal drive and I love to work. I hate suddenly I have to go on holiday,
Really?
But this is time when I could get a lot of work done. So yeah, I've driven to do it, but also the opportunity that living here, and this is a supportive community. People think art is, more important than they do in America. The only reason it's important there is because people can make a lot of money out of it.
Yeah, different focus.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice that you think of New Zealand in that way.
Oh, it's very, very. It's a world away from what I grew up with, and I really appreciate it.
And I feel like you belong here. You've found your place.
Well, I am a Kiwi. I've been alive longer than most Kiwis. I've been here longer. Yeah, I came in my 20s.
Yeah.
I'm
And how old
70.
are you now, Jim?
I'll be 70 this year.
Amazing.
So I've done my time.
You have, and you're just such a, it's incredible actually, and quite a privilege and an honour for me to speak to someone with such a incredible career. You've been working for so long, and you've done so many amazing things.
I feel proud of what I've done, and I just do it. I haven't really pushed to talk about it. I've been on the radio and all that a few times, and it's amazing. This country, you can get on the national radio, you can meet the prime minister. It's no big to people just go, Queen's representative more than once. My friends at home just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the Creative Matters
Mandy.
podcast.
Lovely time. Very comfortable. I got this great view of the bush right outside your window.
Yeah, and the Kiruru came to visit, so that's a good omen.
The Nico palms, we have one in the front garden, but you've got 100, it looks like.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Nicos, and we have a lot of stuff on the ground from them, but, you've got to learn to love those.
And you get lots of babies coming up.
Yeah, but maybe you need to do a Nico palm, actually.
I have made a tiny little brooch.
Have you?
Beautiful. I'm so proud. There was another low relief project right at the very beginning. I'm so pleased with it. Yeah.
Wow, that would be beautiful.
It's tiny. It's like 50 millimeters high.
Oh, gorgeous.
By like 20 millimeters
I'd
wide.
love to see it. Maybe
Tiny.
send me a photo and we can put it on the blog post.
They're hard to make, so I don't really I haven't made one in a long time.
So, lovely to meet you, Jim. Thank you very much.
I've had a great time.
Me too.